6. Bronze Age. Bronze anchors in Gibraltar's Strait of Gibraltar are significant, while Camelot, a fictional castle and court, is often associated with Great Britain. You may wonder though why the mere thought of the Dark Ages makes your heart race. Is it the terrifying legends of wars, famines and plagues that reverberate through the ages, or the harsh reality of living in a world bereft of the modern luxuries and conveniences we take for granted? The idea itself feels intimidating, even unreal. Then today's culture emissary, we're traveling back in time to the Dark Ages, a period of history marked by violent combat, sickness, and limited technology. Could you last a day in this merciless world? Let us find out. You soon realize that you are no longer in the comforts of your modern home, but rather in a world where survival is a daily struggle. The Dark Ages were a time of fear and uncertainty, where death could come swiftly from disease, famine, or a marauding band of Vikings. Imagine waking up in a small, dark and damp hovel, surrounded by the sounds of horses neighing, peasants toiling in the fields, and the distant clang of swords on shields. The fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century and the start of the Renaissance in the 14th century comprised the Dark Ages in European history. Europe was beset by ongoing conflict, starvation, illness, and political unrest during this period. The majority of people lived in poverty and battled everyday survival, making life harsh and brief. People throughout the Dark Ages needed to be resourceful, strong, and prepared to go to any lengths to ensure their survival. Let's travel across the harsh landscape of the Dark Ages when serfdom and feudal regimes formed the core tenets of society. The bulk of people lived in a never-ending cycle of hard labor, toiling the land from sunrise to sunset to produce a meager harvest that was frequently destroyed by the vagaries of nature or the greed of feudal rulers. The hunger ghost hovered over everything, and the plague's deathly grasp loomed big, ready to claim countless lives. The name Dark Ages, which evokes pictures of desolate terrain and primitive living circumstances, really served as a survival crucible. During that time, the unrelenting powers of nature, roving intruders, and the impending threat of illness confronted humanity. But what was it about this time that elevated simple survival to a god-worthy feat? The gloom and ominous atmosphere that permeate the Dark Ages as soon as we travel back in time strike us. We are completely dependent on fire for warmth and light due to the lack of electricity, which exacerbates the oppressive darkness. We soon realize that life will be far more difficult than we had imagined without the contemporary amenities we take for granted, including power and smartphones. Finding food and water is one of the first problems we encounter. For survival throughout the Dark Ages, people had to rely on farming, hunting, and foraging. We are forced to forage for food and drink from natural water sources as we lack access to stores and modern plumbing. Finding food is not as simple as it first appears because of the vast woodlands and the animals' fear of humans. Our bellies growl with hunger as we search for edible plants and game without the knowledge of our predecessors. We know that we must find cover as night falls to keep ourselves safe from the weather. People lived in rudimentary thatch, wood, and mud homes throughout the Dark Ages, which offered only rudimentary shelter from the elements. We are compelled to create a makeshift shelter out of branches and leaves, as we do not have access to contemporary tents or sleeping bags. The chill of the night air seeping through our temporary shelter makes us realize how tough life was back in the Dark Ages. As we cuddle up together for warmth, we become increasingly aware of the threats lurking in the shadows as the darkness grows. People in the Dark Ages had to constantly fear attacks from wild animals, robbers, and raiders. We are forced to defend ourselves using only our power and intelligence in the absence of sophisticated weaponry or security measures. Every sound of falling leaves and the crack of a twig as the night goes on reminds us that danger is always a possibility. People needed a broad range of survival abilities to survive throughout the Dark Ages, from farming and hunting to first treatment and navigation. We become acutely aware of how reliant on contemporary amenities and technology we have become when we struggle to obtain food, drink, and shelter. We find ourselves lost and confused about how to go in this strange and harsh world without the wisdom and experience of our forefathers. It's brutally obvious how important it is to acquire fundamental survival skills when we stumble through the night, trying our hardest to find a means to survive. We will explore the facets of complexity that contributed to the Dark Ages' dual nature of light and darkness, from the subtleties of medieval warfare to the straightforward yet deep routines of agriculture and household life. We will explore the historical accounts of fabled characters whose adventures reverberate through the ages, bearing witness to the human ability to persevere in the face of overwhelming adversity and show courage. We are thankful to have made it through the night, hungry and tired as the day rises on our 24-hour challenge. Throughout the Dark Ages, people had to fight to survive, and there was always danger around the corner. We now have a greater respect for the fortitude, inventiveness, and bravery of our forefathers as a result of overcoming this obstacle. Even though we didn't survive the Dark Ages for a whole day, we came out of them stronger, smarter, and more prepared to take on any obstacles that lie ahead. We appreciate you traveling with us, and we hope you'll check back soon for additional survival challenges. Though the past may have been gloomy, the future is always promising. Share your views below and stay tuned for our exploration of another fascinating culture on Culture Emissary.